Wow. The Cleveland Cavaliers are officially the second most embarrassing thing to happen to basketball. Obviously, nothing will top the LA Clippers, obviously. But after seeing what we all saw last night and how Charles Barkley and Draymond Green, they went all in on the bigs between Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, and Draymond going in on the lack of leadership going on in Cleveland. Yeah. This ain't a good look. Y'all better take your L, Cavs fans, and pray that Bron comes back to save y'all again, man. Even at 41. But New York, New York. I'm from New York, New York. Yeah, and they say New York City. Yeah, and since I made it here, I can make it anywhere. Before we start roasting the Cleveland Cavaliers and praising the Knicks for being one of the more hotter teams in the NBA, obviously outside of, I guess, the Oklahoma City Thunder, let's take 20 seconds of your time with our usual intro. Now, Cavs, what the actual hell was that? It feels like that every time that these boys were in a close game, or at least when the game was close, there were times where they did tie the game. But Tim Legler said it best, and I was watching the highlights before I even started recording this video. It was like the Cavaliers could not hit timely shots when it mattered most. And it just felt like these boys mentally quit on the season, and I feel like they quit on Kenny Atkinson as well. And the reason why I say that is because there were a lot of easy defensive breakdowns against the Cavaliers in this particular game, bro. And then you don't collapse in game one when you had a 22-point lead with 7:52 to go, and you lose that game in overtime. And then you come back, you try to make a comeback in game two, and then that ultimately fell short. And obviously, they made their comeback when James Harden was on the bench. But when Kenny put James back in, their comeback hopes evaporated in the blink of an eye. And this is not me putting it all on James Harden, because yes, he is one of the reasons why the Cavaliers got here. And his facilitating is why Donovan Mitchell he's had up until this point, the playoffs he's had. I thought this was probably Donovan Mitchell's best playoff run, obviously, because he's never made a conference finals before. But what I'm seeing here is that the Knicks front court is outplaying the front court of the Cavaliers. I don't know necessarily what the starting lineups were. I believe Mike Brown rolled with Josh Hart or OG and Karl Towns as the 4 and 5. Let me go look that up. And Charles Barkley made a great point about the Cavaliers pregame. This was about Jarrett Allen because Karl Anthony Towns was guarding Evan Mobley. And I feel like Mike Brown did switch it up because Jarrett Allen was playing really physical this game, or at least I don't want to say playing really physical, but he was the only one playing with any sort of aggression outside of one Donovan Mitchell. And I think Donovan Mitchell wasn't playing that aggressive either. You can argue that Jarrett Allen was playing more aggressive than Donovan. Here's the thing about James Harden. No matter how great he is in the regular season, it's like watching the same movie expecting a different result. You know what you're going to get from James in the postseason because James Harden, yes, he's going to have his fair share of good games, but it's games like this and games like game one that are absolutely going to make you think that, shoot, man, is James Harden really that guy to help us get over the top? This dude's never winning a ring, bruh. This dude is never winning a ring. So let me see the starting lineup. Okay. He did roll with OG Anunoby and Karl Anthony Towns as the front court. And even though Mobley had 24 points, it just felt like OG outplayed him when it mattered most. Do you know what I mean? And I thought Evan Mobley, I thought he played a lot better than he did games 1 and 2, or at least game 2. But it's just like the house was already on fire for Cleveland. And Charles Barkley said that Mobley cannot handle physicality when it comes to OG Anunoby and Karl Anthony Towns because those two have been playing really smart physical defense, especially Karl Towns. One of the things about Cat that I never liked about him in the past, especially dating back to his days with Minnesota, especially when Minnesota was making the playoffs from 2022 to 2024 when Cat was on the team, The dude always gets himself into foul trouble for no reason at all. He picked up so many egregious offensive fouls. And in truth, he did the same thing last year, especially against the Indiana Pacers. Yeah, there were times where Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner were grabbing the guy, and for some reason, they called the foul on Cat, and I saw some of those plays. But at the same time, Karl-Anthony Towns made matters worse by trying to get overly emotional, and it's just like there were times where he played out of control in that Pacers series. And in truth, he was like that at the beginning of the Atlanta series as well, when they fell down 2-1. But I noticed a shift in energy when it came to Cat. I feel like defensively, he's becoming more disciplined. And I don't know what it is, because he wasn't like this under Tom Thibodeau. Jalen Brunson, nothing has to be said about that guy. 30 points, 10 and 19 shooting. Obviously, your typical Brunson burner night. Mikal Bridges stepped up in a big way, and a lot of his points were pretty much easy baskets, though, but I thought he did a great job on defense, getting 3 steals and a couple blocks. Karl Towns himself had 3 steals. Josh Hart himself had 4 steals, and he had his typical Josh Hart game again, but Game 2 was the Josh Hart game, you know what I mean? So, Game 3, Josh had 12 and 9, but last game he had 26 points, and obviously I made my video covering that as well. Landry Shamet came off the bench, and dude was catching fire like he did Game 1. For some context, y'all, I said in my last video talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers imploding in Game 3, or the Cleveland Cavaliers better win Game 3, I meant to say. I talked about the Cavaliers implosion in Game 1. I mentioned how Landry Shamet did not play a single minute until the fourth quarter in OT, where Landry just started shooting the ball like crazy. And it was no different today. Yeah, he had 14 points off the bench, but it's like one of those games where it didn't feel like 14 points. It felt like he came out the bench and had a career high. You know what I mean? A la Sam Merrill, Game 7 versus Detroit. And I want to get to the Cleveland Cavaliers and how pathetic they look, obviously, but how fatigue is also playing a factor in how pathetic they look. And this is not me making excuses for the Cleveland Cavaliers, because I get it. You played 7 games against Toronto. You played 7 games against Detroit. Obviously, that is very taxing on the body, especially when you have to play the games every other day. But we're going to get to that. What I loved about the Knicks is that, and I alluded in my last video too, they're not just playing Jalen Brunson hero ball like they did in last year's playoffs, especially against the Indiana Pacers. I thought even in the series against Boston, where they won in 6 in the second round last year, and then last year's first round series against the Detroit Pistons, I thought they were too Jalen Brunson reliant. And it was just like, they shouldn't be, because you acquired Karl-Anthony Towns and Mikal Bridges for that exact reason. Obviously, Mikal's a defensive stud, but he's capable of scoring 20 when the situation calls for it. And you have Karl-Anthony Towns, who's a known player that could give you 25 points and give you 12 boards. You know what I'm saying? And then OG can give you like 18 to 22 when, again, that's when the situation calls for it. Under Mike Brown, they have a much more balanced offensive attack. And you could tell by how the ball's moving a lot more, but at the same time, they do go to Jalen Brunson because at the end of the day, he is their clutch player, he is their closer, and he is the guy that's going to take you home. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you don't want to have that happening for a full 48-minute game. And you can obviously tell, and here's some context. Yes, Jalen Brunson played 41 minutes, but remember, he had to play it every single night under Tom Thibodeau. Same with the rest of the stars like OG and Mikal. I feel like those guys getting 40 minutes absolutely hurt the Knicks when it mattered most last year. Because when you play Bridges and Anunoby 40 minutes a night, obviously they're going to look so taxed trying to guard Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard and Aaron Nesmith and then Pascal Siakam as well. Obviously it doesn't fall on those two, but I feel like playing those guys 40 minutes is what hurt the Knicks down the stretch when it mattered most last year, in my opinion. Here, it's not hurting them as much because, again, like I said in my last video, Mike Brown is going to his bench a lot more than Tom Thibodeau ever did. Now, y'all can say that, well, the Knicks didn't have an adequate bench or an adequate enough bench under Tom Thibodeau, so how could Tom Thibodeau play his bench when you have Cameron Payne, who is basically unplayable, DeLon Wright, who is, I don't know where that dude is right now, and then you have a lot of rookies, and then Precious Achiuwa is not that great of a backup anyway either. He's like a third stringer. You know what I'm saying? So looking back at it now, there was a legit point made there, but now the Knicks have a legit bench that he is going to. And then Landry Shamet is the ringleader off said bench. And then you have Deuce McBride, Jordan Clarkson, who played a couple minutes in this game, but in the games he did receive a lot of decent minutes, he was absolutely an offensive spark. Jose Alvarado, again, whenever you play him, a lot of good things happen for the Knicks, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because Jose is a defensive he's a defensive-minded pest. That is my praise for the Knicks. And I watched Dreamers Pros live on the Knicks going up 3-0. How awesome is it, man, that the city of New York gets to experience being in the NBA Finals for the first time since 1999, bro? Obviously, they lost to the San Antonio Spurs, and they haven't been back since. Well, they've been to the Conference Finals in 2000, but last year, that was their first time being in the Conference Finals since then. You go down the list of playoff flameouts. Obviously, they had, they collapsed. I don't want to say they collapsed in 2024, but the Knicks team with Jalen Brunson, and at the time they had Dante DiVincenzo. This is before Karl Towns and Mikal Bridges. They ultimately lost in a Game 7 because everyone was going down like flies. Like OG had like a hamstring injury. Jalen Brunson had a hand injury. In 2023, their players weren't good enough. It was just Jalen Brunson one-on-one hero ball. Again, that was their problem for the last couple years under Tom Thibodeau. In 2021, they made the playoffs for the first time since 2013. They got outed in 5 by the Atlanta Hawks. They made it to the second round in 2013, but they lost in a Game 6 versus the Indiana Pacers. And then so on and so forth, man. They've went through a plethora of stars. You think of Carmelo, you think of Amari Stoudemire, you think of Allen Houston, you think of T-Mac. Bro, this city deserves it, man. New York City deserves to be in the finals. And it's just like, it is the mecca of basketball. There's a reason why people say that whenever you go to MSG, it just feels like a whole different environment compared to, let's say, a Staples Center, what we're seeing with Intuit Dome right now, what we've seen with Oracle Arena, even though Oracle is probably the second most intimidating arena, or the most, or how do I say it? They have the second best, Oracle Arena has probably the second best atmosphere in comparison to MSG, in my personal opinion. This is not me hating on the Warriors because Oracle Arena was that arena, all right? You stepped into that arena as the opponent, you better play your A game because that crowd can pop any second now. You know what I'm saying? And it sucks that the Warriors don't have that because Chase Center absolutely blows when it comes to at least crowd atmosphere. But with MSG, you think of all the great stars that put on a show. I remember in 2013 where Steph Curry made his name known to the NBA when he scored 54 points and he was shooting the ball like crazy. And it was just like no one's heard of Steph Curry until his 4th year, outside of Warriors fans. And then he put on an absolute clinic, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, against Carmelo, against J.R. Smith, Amon Shumpert. Steph Curry was absolutely torching them. Obviously, they lost that game from what I remember. And then you have LeBron coming into town. Obviously, I think the last good game I remember him having, or his at least more memorable game, was back in 2017-18 when Bron was with the Cavaliers. KD coming into town. Michael Jordan. Kobe has put on multiple shows at MSG. Luka as well. Who else? Cade Cunningham made his debut at MSG, and I think he did a really good job as well. He even stole a couple games from MSG. And then Anthony Edwards, all these great stars, bro. Jason Tatum, and obviously, Joel Embiid as well. I think he showed out in the 2024 playoffs against the New York Knicks. Obviously, it was a different story this year because Sixers had no chance, at least from what I thought. My point is that New York City, you could say, is the mecca of basketball, and for that city to be in a NBA Finals for the first time in 2 decades, almost 3 decades, it's special, man. Seeing the Knicks in the finals feels really good for me personally because of the fact, look, man, I've said it many times, I have family from New York. My dad's a New Yorker. My uncle's a Knicks fan. My oldest sister lives out in NYC. So, man, they deserve it, man. And I think they deserve to win the NBA Finals too. But we're going to get to that in a minute. Let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, though. James Harden. You ain't going to win a championship with that cat, bruh. That dude cannot guard anything. And in big playoff games, he chokes, bruh. He absolutely chokes his freaking brains out. Or he chokes his brain out. And it's just like their front court's not good enough against big physical teams. Obviously, the bigs did what they did in games 5 and 7 of that Pistons series, sure. But the problem was the Pistons offense was way too Cade Cunningham reliant. Jalen Duren was way too inconsistent. Tobias Harris came back down to earth, or he reverted back to the Tobias Harris we always knew and loved. And the offense was way too Cade Cunningham reliant, which made Mobley and Allen not have to work as hard on the defensive end because they could wait at the rim for either Duren or Cade. You know what I mean? And then in that 7-game series versus the Toronto Raptors, Jarrett Allen had to become Superman because, like I said, Jakob Poeltl is a horrible big man. You know what I mean? And Colin Murray-Boyles, I thought, did a good job. But overall, bro, the Raptors were too small for that Cavs team, and it was easier for Jarrett Allen to dominate inside. But now you have a big physical front court, or at least a front court that can match Mobley and Allen, and OG and Karl Towns are outplaying those two guys. And Donovan Mitchell, for as much as I love him, and he's one of my favorite players, there's a reason why people have questioned if you can win a championship with Donovan as your main guy. Because yes, he's an electric scorer, and he's one of the more fun players to watch when it comes to scoring the basketball. Yes. But my problem with Donovan is that I don't know what it is about him in the playoffs. Maybe they just figure out that his offense can be really predictable, and when he's not hitting shots, he's not doing much on he's not doing much on the defensive end. I don't know what it is, bro. Because he's still putting up really solid numbers for what it's worth. But I feel like every time he goes up against an elite defense, Donovan Mitchell doesn't play up to standard. And this was his issue last year when he was facing the Indiana Pacers in the second round. No matter how good he was, it was like the Pacers figured him out. And it's just like when you stagnate Donovan and let him go one-on-one, the offensive flow dies down and Cleveland cannot really get freed up. Or something like that. I don't know, bro. I don't know what it is about Donovan in the playoffs. Because he's still a good scorer. Don't get me wrong. But now it's just like, it's games like this, and in truth, games 1 and 2, where Donovan did not score a single field goal between the 7:52 mark and overtime, where it's just like people are asking, I don't know if you can win a championship with him. At least as the main guy. Maybe as the number 2 option, absolutely. Put him next to a guy like Anthony Edwards, I'm sure he could possibly win a championship there. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't know what it is. The Cavaliers, they don't have any leadership. I mean, yeah, that's why they got James Harden, but James he's not a good leader. He's on par with Kevin Durant when it comes to being a leader. When things get hard, the dude bounces from another team to another team to another team, and Dreamers Pro said it best. I don't know if he's going to finish his contract out in Cleveland. I bet you he won't. Because it's just like the Cavaliers front office they don't really have a direction. They have to mortgage their future just so they can win now with Donovan. And remember, they had to give up a lot of players, more notably Lauri Markkanen, for Donovan Mitchell. And it's just like, okay, you ran it back for a couple years with Darius Garland, and that didn't work out. You got the best you could do is a 5-game exit in the second round. Obviously, Donovan was hurt. But I think the Celtics would have beat the Cavaliers either way. That was the 2024 second round. And then you try to get DeAndre Hunter to bolster your defense or what have you. And I don't know who they got to complement their bench, but I think Cleveland did not have a bench to go to at all outside of Ty Jerome from my memory. And then you got outed in 5 by the Indiana Pacers. You finally make it back to the conference finals for the first time since 2018. And honestly, y'all should have lost that game 7, Cavs. But because of the fact that the Pistons were way too fatigued, Cade and Duren and a lot of these guys hit a wall for some reason, the Cavaliers took advantage and they absolutely smoked the Pistons on their home floor. So, I don't know, man. And here's the thing, too. You're going back-to-back 7-game series. Of course, fatigue is going to play a factor. Of course, you're going to look tired versus a much more energized team who, for some context, they have not lost a game since Game 3 of the Atlanta series, which was a month ago. These boys have not lost a game in a month. Meanwhile, the Cavaliers have to play every other day, and it looked like that they were not a good road team, or actually it didn't look like they were not even a good road team at all. That's why the Toronto Raptors series won 7 games when it had no business going 7 games. And that says a lot about Darko Rajakovic and the Toronto Raptors and how good Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett are. Yes, that is true. And they didn't even have Emmanuel Quickley and Brandon Ingram. But even still, you look at that series, I thought that was a mismatch for the Raptors because the Raptors did not have good shot creation. And it was just like, they took that team to 7 games? They took those boys to 7 games, bro. You go down 0-2 versus Detroit. You win your next 3 games. You win a critical game 5 in Detroit. And I said game 6 was your game 7. You lose game 6. I didn't have a good feeling that they were going to go into Detroit and win, and they somehow did it. It was just the fact that the roster was not good enough to compete. I think that's what it came down to. I do feel like Cade does need another star, but again, I'm not going to get too much into that. My point being, man, is that the Cavaliers have officially, they've officially become the second most embarrassing thing to happen to basketball outside the Los Angeles Clippers. Because it's just like, no matter how good they are never going to reach the same type of success that they've had when they had LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. Because, you know, they made 3 consecutive NBA finals with LeBron and Kyrie. And then obviously you had Kevin Love. And then they made their last finals trip with LeBron on the team, with the second best player being George Hill and J.R. Smith or Jeff Green, whatever. But the Cavaliers should absolutely be embarrassed that this series is unfolding the way they did. And that was because of their ineptitude in game 1 and the fact that, man, they won 7 games against a Toronto team that they had no business going 7-2, and they could have closed out Detroit in game 6, but it took a heroic effort in game 7 from Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen. Here's the thing too, bro. Why the hell, Kenny Atkinson, are you still insisting that Harden should guard Jalen Brunson? Every time these dudes are switching every single play, and Jalen Brunson gets that matchup with James Harden, and James Harden cannot guard a parked car. And there was a point in time, like at the very end of the game, where Jalen Brunson had the ball in the fast break, right? I guess Strus was supposed to take the ball, and then for some reason, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley were just standing there watching Jalen Brunson hit that layup. I'm just like, yeah, these boys quit, bro. There was no fight. There was no heart in this game. There was no will to stave off elimination. There was nothing, bro. There were times where they were down 5, they tied the game or whatever, but they never hit a shot. It don't matter. This game was about heart. No Josh Hart. But these boys did not show up at all. At least from what I can tell. I guess Mobley showed up and Jared Allen did a decent job, like I alluded to at the beginning of the video. This was just absolutely pathetic by the Cavaliers, and no words can really describe how pathetic this looks for Cleveland. So let's look at some key points from our friend Google about why the hell the Cavaliers lost this game, and probably inexplicably so. So Jalen Brunson had 21 of his points in the second half, 21 of his 30 points. And then Donovan Mitchell and James Harden shot 4 of 18 in the second half. Wow. And then you look at it, I'm looking at the NBA box score right here, man. And the Cavaliers shot 29% from 3. You are not going to win too many games shooting 29% from 3, especially when the Cavaliers are 10% better than you. They shot 39% from 3. And these boys shot 28 of them, while the Cavaliers shot 41 of them. How the hell are you going to win attempting that many threes and missing that many threes, bro? And then the Cavaliers, too, got absolutely slaughtered in transition. They gave up 30 fast break points, whereas Cleveland only had 10. Again, how are you going to win big perennial playoff games, especially with a fast-paced team? And the Knicks had become more of a fast-paced team with Mike Brown as the head coach. Because last year, this was New York's problem against the Indiana Pacers. They got outmatched in transition because of how fast Tyrese Haliburton wants to push the ball, which allowed runouts for guys like Pascal Siakam and some transition dunks for Miles Turner. And when it wasn't Tyrese Haliburton, it was either TJ McConnell or Andrew Nembhard or Aaron Nesmith. You know what I'm saying? That was their issue last year. This year, it's the Cavaliers' issue. They got absolutely screwed over in transition because they play so slow. And it kind of frustrates me too because Kenny Atkinson, at least when he was with the Brooklyn Nets, when he had, D'Angelo Russell, Jared Allen, Karis LeVert, and all those guys, he was one of those fast-paced coaches too. And he was an assistant coach to Steve Kerr, who, I don't want to say he originated the fast-paced offense, but he revolutionized that with guys like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Draymond Green. And then you had Kevin Durant to the mix. A plethora of things that are going wrong for the Cavaliers. And you know what? They absolutely deserve to get swept. They showed zero heart in games 2 and 3. In game 1 of this series was where you lost the series when you were up 22 with less than 8 minutes to go, and then you blow it. I don't know how the Cavaliers are going to recover from this, bro. Unless they get LeBron James back, this team is never going to win anything with James Harden or Donovan Mitchell. And if I'm LeBron, why the hell would I want to go back there? I understand it's a great storybook ending because, I'm from Cleveland. I brought a championship here, gave the Cavaliers 10 of my 23 years of being in this league, some of the best years of my life, arguably. But it's just like, if this is the type of stuff that I'm in for, if I'm Cleveland or if I'm LeBron, then why the hell would I want to go back? And here's the thing about James Harden and Donovan Mitchell. Yes, I understand why they got James Harden. I explained it in a comment on Running Back Philly where they said, why did they trade Garland? Why did they trade this guy, that guy? I said that, look, I'm not the biggest fan of James Harden, but they had to do that trade because Darius Garland was on the final year of his contract, and Darius Garland was injury prone too. For as much as I'm not the biggest James Harden fan, even though I did gain a lot of respect for him when he played for the LA Clippers last year, where he helped carry that team when Kawhi Leonard was out, I did gain a lot of respect for him then. But the problem is, again, you look at his playoff history, he still holds the playoff record for the most turnovers in a single game. And I feel like if the Cavaliers wanted to, they should have went out and got a guy like DeJounte Murray, who is a better fit for Cleveland in my honest opinion, because he shields Donovan's defensive deficiencies a lot better than James Harden could ever do. And this is what I said about Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves last year. Those two are defensively deficient players. And yes, Luka and Kyrie were defensively deficient, but the thing is, Kyrie is much more quicker and athletic. Austin Reeves is not. You cannot win with a defensively deficient backcourt. You can keep Luka, but you also need to surround him with guys that are good two-way players. Same thing with Donovan Mitchell. I think DeJounte Murray would have been a better fit than James Harden because DeJounte is not a defensively deficient player. He can play both sides of the ball, and he can cover up some of Donovan's lack of defense. I don't know, man. This is why a defensively deficient backcourt never wins anything in this league. And that's why I made my point about the Lakers. I don't know if you can win with Luka and Austin Reeves as your backcourt, considering they're both defensively deficient players, and they're not the most athletic guys out there. I'm not saying James Harden is an athletic freak, because the guy is like 220, 30 pounds. At this point, Cavaliers, y'all just gotta blow it up, man. Y'all just gotta blow this thing up, because it's clearly not working. Donovan Mitchell ain't staying, bruh. Donovan Mitchell ain't staying in Cleveland. Going back to the New York Knicks, I'm very happy for that city, man. I do have a feeling, though, that they're going to lose game 4, but it's going to be one of those games where they intentionally drop it, or they just kind of throw in a stinker, or where the guys don't play well. And then all of a sudden, game 5, they absolutely put on a show. And you know what? I wouldn't mind seeing that, but at the same time, close them out when you feel like you can close them out, because you don't want to be back here in a game 6, honestly. So if you can, you should just close them out right now. But I feel like that they're going to lose game 4 because they're going to come out a little flat, and Cleveland runs away with it. Or maybe they do get up 22 again, and then the New York Knicks come back. But I have a feeling that game 4 is going to be a throwaway game for the New York Knicks. Cleveland absolutely shoots the ball like crazy, and the game gets put out of reach or whatever, and then they come back for game 5 and absolutely steal the show. And honestly, that would be a storybook ending not a storybook ending, but that would be like a dream for Knicks fans to see the Knicks celebrate being in the NBA Finals in their own arena. And I don't know, man. It's going to be bedlam in New York if that happens. I think it'll be bedlam in New York anyway. I think it's bedlam in New York right now because they're up 3-0. They're a win away from clinching their first NBA Finals for the first time since 1999. Man, that city in New York, there's a reason why it's like they call it the city that never sleeps, because even on like nights where it's just like, oh man, I need my bed rest, it just feels like, oh no, when the Knicks win, in big playoff games, oh my gosh, don't expect to get good sleep because it's going to be ruckus out there in Manhattan. It's going to be ruckus out there in the Bronx and Queens. Oh my god, bro. But what do you guys think? And what do you guys think of the Cavaliers? And what do you guys think they should do? Thank you guys for tuning into another episode of Series Recap. I love y'all. I'll see y'all in the next one, man. That's the end of this video. I'm X. Deuces.